Swayam Prabha. Digital India. Educated India.
So, welcome back to this lecture number 12 of week 3, and in this lecture we will talk about 3 different approaches to performance, that is behavior, result and trait approach. You remember we just talked about the determinants of performance, and where we discussed about 2 determinants, that is task and context, and both are important. Now, when it comes to measurement of performance, these 3 things are important. Okay. So, now we have seen that your behavior leads to results. Okay. Now, another important, that is your trait and characteristics, that is related to the individual, that is equally important, right. So, all these 3 factors are important. So, when we are going to measure performance, we have to look at these 3 factors, that is behavior, result and trait approach to performance, right. So, what we are going to discuss in this lecture, that how these behavior, result and trait approach contribute to performance of the people. Now, we talked about the context, right. We also talked about the task, that was the determinant of the performance. Now, if you look at the individual, right, or even a team, who is going to perform certain tasks, right. Now, they have certain traits and characteristics, for example, his own personality, his own say beliefs, his own motivation, his emotion, right, his ability, traits and characteristics, all this is a part of the trait, right. Now, this individual or team who is going to perform, he is going to perform in a given context or situation, right, which is a part of what you call the context, and in this context he is going to engage in certain behaviors, that he is going to carry out certain activities as defined by his job description. So, when we say that he is going to engage in certain activities as defined by his job description, so it is a part of the behavior which is going to produce certain results, right. So, now you look at it, that there are 3 things that is coming out, that is traits or characteristics, right. Depending upon that, he is going to engage in certain behaviors which produces results, right. So, traits and characteristics which going of the individual become the antecedent, which is going to influence his behavior, right, which ultimately culminates in certain results. Now, all this happens in a given context or environment. So, the performance is dependent on the context of the environment in which the person is operating. So, what we need to understand is these 3 things, that is behavior, trait and results further. So, we have 3 different approaches to measure the performance, right. It means you are going to work in a context in an organization, right. You are going to engage in certain behaviors which is going to produce results. Okay. Now, the question is that why, given the similar context, we do not expect similar behaviors or similar results from the employees, because employees behave in a different way, right. For example, if there is a teacher who is teaching say 100 students in the class, they are getting there and the context is same, maybe same, the classroom, the teaching, the environment, right. But when it comes to their behavior and results, it is different, right, that is one thing. Similarly, if different the employees are placed in different situations, then you also expect different kind of results. So, both are possible. Why it happens? It is because when you are going to measure performance, probably you are only considering either their behavior or the result, or you are not considering the trait, right. So, when you are going to measure performance, you need to consider all the 3 aspects of performance, that is the behavior, what he does, results what he produces and trait that what he is, right. Coming to the behavior approach, right. So, when I am going to talk about the behavior approach, right. So, behavior is related to the activities which is to be performed by an individual in a given job, right, but it is not going to consider the traits of the employees or the results of the that is achieved, right. So, this is related to the process that what a individual does, right. Say for example, we are going to talk about the behavior of a salesman. So, what are the activities that a salesman does as a part of his job? That is point of contact he has, he is going to contact the customers, right. So, he is going to communicate with the customers, right. Then he is going to provide a description of the product which he wants to sell. He is going to negotiate with the customers, he is going to persuade him, right. So, all this is a part of what you call behavior, right. Okay. When we are going to consider about behavior, it means that in order to sell a product, right, the objective is what? To sell a product. So, in order to sell a product, he is going to engage in these kind of behaviors. So, these are the behaviors, or there could be other behaviors I have not written here, right, contacting the customers, communicating them, talking about the product, negotiating with that, persuading the customers to buy it. Okay. So, you are doing all this basically to sell a product, right. So, selling of a product is the result here. Now, this result can be obtained only when this part is effective, right. So, in a behavior approach we are talking about what you do as a part of your job. So, as a salesman you are engaged in these kind of activities, so that you are going to produce a good result, right. So, the result is maybe the X units that you have been able to sell to different customers, and you are going to repeat the same thing with different customers, right. Now, your behavior changes. In case of customer 1 you engage in differently, and in case of customer 2 you are going to engage in a different kind of behavior, because the characteristics of the customer is different. So, another important behavior which is very important is understanding the customers. In terms of their needs and requirements. So, depending upon the customer's need you are going to sell one product, depending upon the customer 2 needs and requirements you are going to sell another product, right. So, ultimately the number of units that you are going to sell will be the result, and all this is going to be part of your behavior. Say, look for another example. Say a teacher, a professor, he is going to engage in certain behaviors, right, teaching, communicating, giving feedback to the students, building relationship with the students, what we call the rapport, right, evaluating, taking exams, right. So, all this is a part of the job which is doing to produce results, that is the performance of the students, that is one thing, and his performance also. So, the performance of the teacher depends upon what he does, right. So, when we are going to talk about behavior, you are going to include these things, because this is very important, right. But when you are going to determine the performance, you are not going to consider only the behavior or the performance. Another factor which is very important is the context. What is the context of the performance? Whether you have all the necessary support, tools, equipments, top management commitment and support or not. If it is not there, suppose there is a salesperson, if he is not being guided by his sales supervisor or sales manager, probably he will not be able to do it, right. He is not provided all kind of resources and help that is required by him to sell a product, he is not going to be successful. So, what I mean to say here, that when we are going to talk about behavior, we need to ensure that these things are present, right, and that is what I have been talking about, the behavior approach. So, it is a process through which an employee is doing a job which results in certain outcome, but it does not talk about the outcome as such, right. Moving to look at the whether the behavior is appropriate or not. So, you need to engage in appropriate behavior. For example, if you are not able to understand the needs and expectations of the customers and accordingly you are not going to handle him, probably you will not be able to close the sales, right. So, you have to say that whether you are taking a long time to achieve this desired outcomes or not. Okay. If you are taking then probably you will not be able to successful, or if the behavior and result is not linked, it means that you do your behavior and they expect that the result would be coming out, right. And you think that okay, you are going to make certain behaviors and maybe sometime in the future you will be expecting certain results, right. And sometimes the context is not supporting and that is why you are not able to perform well. So, even you are making the appropriate behavior, but it is not resulting in good performance because the context is not supporting or there are certain things the environment is not under your control. For example, a salesman despite his effective behavior and communication or whatever he does is not able to close the sales because there is economic recession and in general people are not buying things or goods that you are producing. So, what will happen? There are certain things that is beyond the control of the employees and then the results are going to be affected, right. So, we need to ensure that these conditions are present, or if they are not present probably you are not going to be successful. Look at this example. Here I have taken this example of what you call genset technology, right. This is an example of genset technology. I have given this example to explain of behavior approach. Now, this genset technology is a provider of local wireless long distance voice and voice over IP services. So, basically into the field of IT technology. Now, how employees are evaluated, okay? How development plans for the employees are made and how they are using different core competencies are the dimensions of the performance, which is related to not the result, but with the behavior. It means each employees are going to be evaluated on certain competencies or dimensions which are related to the behavior, like acting with integrity, focusing on the customers, delivering results, building relationship and demonstrative leadership. Now, if you look at these 5 core competencies which is expected from the employees, what is happening? How many of them are related to behavior and how many of them are related to results? See, only one is related to result, that is delivering results. Other like acting with integrity, focusing on the customers, building relationship and leadership are behavioral competencies, right. So, it is very, very important to look at behavioral competencies because that is what makes a difference, right. So, this what I mean to say is that you need to consider both the task and the contextual performance, right. So, in either in the evaluation or in the development process, basically you are going to write behavioral examples that how they are performing the job. Okay. Are they acting with integrity? Are they focusing on the customers very well or not? Whether they have been able to close the deals or not? Whether they have developed good relationship with the stakeholders including customers? Have they showed leadership capability? Because that is what will make a difference in the entire performance, right. So, when you are going to look at the behavior, you need to see that what are the things that need to be done. So, you need to identify the competencies depending upon the job description, you need to identify those behaviors which are relevant, critical and important to the individual, because that is what contributes to the performance, and then when you are going to evaluate them, you look at it. Similarly, when you want to develop them also, even in the development process, you make sure that these behavioral competencies are developed, so that they are able to perform well, right. So, this company has been able to consider both the task performance as well as contextual performance, so that he is able to develop a good system, right. Now, I am taking another example here, say retail store manager, right. So, in a retail store manager, what are the different kind of things that you are looking forward to? Now, if you look at this example, you can see what is happening. We expect a store manager to have a good teamwork, he is welcoming and thanking customers, providing assistance to the employees, right, monitoring customers and employees also for theft, right. So, these are not the results that is expected, these are the behavior which is important, which is going to produce results, right. So, in this case you can see that when we are giving this example, the idea is that you also need to measure the behavior, because it contributes to performance, right. Now, when we are talking about behavior based measure, what are the problems? Okay. For example, it is easy to give feedback or not. Say for example, if you want to provide feedback, in case of a retail store manager, same. For example, the result may be that you have not been able to achieve your sales goals. So, this kind of behavior, though it is negative in nature, it is related, this kind of result, sorry, it is related to which behavior? Because you are not monitoring the employees. So, you are allowing your employees to wait too long offering help to the customer. So, what happens in the process? So, your employees are not attending the customers, and that is why your sales is not as desired, right. So, when it comes to measuring behavior, you have to make sure that you are able to relate behavior with the result, that is one thing, right, and you are able to provide feedback about it. But the challenge is here that how do you know that what are the relevant and critical behaviors that is need to be measured? Because you need to identify all such critical and relevant and important behaviors which need to be measured, right. Because people might be making different kind of behaviors and leading to the same results. Okay. So, it is very important to look into these challenges, and probably it is possible, if possible, try to capture the full range of behavior which could be considered as critical and important. Okay. Even also see that if there are any deviations, because there could be different behaviors leading to the same results. So, try to capture those behaviors or a set of possible behaviors or the range of possible behaviors which might be related to results, right. Moving further, after discussing about the behavior approach and see what are the challenges related to the measurement, okay, we are moving to a more objective approach, because if you look at the behavior approach, it is very subjective, because you are going to make an subjective assessment of the behavior, right. So, it is a subjective approach, but when it comes to result, it is more objective, where you have hard facts and data to compare whether the people are able to reach the performance standards or not. For example, if a salesperson is given a target to sell 100 units in a month, right, and you are using a result approach to measure it, you see that whether the person is able to sell 100 units or not, right. So, basically here you are going to emphasize on the outcome and the results that is produced by the employees, right. You are not concerned about the behavior which has led to this result. Okay. But ultimately what actually happens, that if you are going to segregate it, you are going to segregate behavior from the result, what will happen? You cannot expect these kind of results, but if you are adopting a simply a bottom line approach, it means that you are only concerned with the performance. So, you focus on the results, right. For example, how many sales is there, number of accounts that you have acquired, how much time you spend with the client, how many errors you have made in the production. Okay. So, all this is an example of the results, right. So, when it comes to efficiency, you are going to measure results, right. For example, what is the rejection rate in the organization, in the product, how many sales you have closed, right, how many units you have produced, right. So, the idea here is that you are going to engage in cost effective behaviors, so that your results are better, right, because your productivity depends upon your output and input. So, if you use less input to produce more output, probably you are going to be more effective, you are going to produce better results, okay, and that is what we call cost effective, right, because you are less expensive and it is possible to track results than behaviors, because it is not possible for an organization to monitor and track behavior of the employees which produces good results, and that is why they are not concerned about the results, but they are more behaviors, but they are more concerned about the results. Now, look at some of the examples. Okay. Now, what actually happens that when you are going to adopt a result appropriate, then you have to ensure that workers are skilled enough to perform, right. Behavior is linked with the result. Results show consistent improvement over time, it means the results is improving. Suppose today this month you have produced 10 units, so next month you are going to produce 12 units. So, there is a consistent improvement over time, okay, because there could be a different ways to do the job in a right way, because there is no single best way to perform the job, right. For example, you can say that okay, a particular teacher is adopting a particular approach to teach in a class and is effective, but there is another teacher he is adopting a different approach to teach, but he is also equally effective. What does it mean to say? It means that both the teachers are effective, but they are adopting two different ways to teach, right. So, we can say that there are many ways to do the job in the right way, right. So, the idea here is to ensure that the behavior are result oriented, right. Similarly, there is a consistent improvement in performance, and do not specify certain behaviors which might lead to better results, right. Make sure that whatever behavior is made by the employees is relevant and critical and contribute to the performance. Now, we will take some examples to explain this when I am talking about the result based approach. Now, if you look at this result based approach, you can see that suppose you want to monitor the results of a retail store manager here. We talked about the behavior part. Now, when it comes to result, what are the things that we can see? What is the sales figure? What are the volume that is sold? What is the revenue that is generated? Are the profits that is made, right? What is the footfall per hour, right? That could also be there. How many customers are coming to the market or your say premises, right? So, there could be different kind of results that could be obtained. So, you need to specify what results you are expecting in an individual, right. Say for example, in case of a professor, so how many papers he is writing, right, how many consulting projects he has, research papers he is writing, how many training programs he is doing, right, how much consulting amount he is generating. So, all this is basically related to revenue generation, right. So, when we are talking about these results, we need to ensure that these results are an outcome of the behavior, right. So, look at this example. When you are talking about examples of a retail store manager, what are the various factors that you are considering? The sales figures, the profit per square foot, how much inventory you have, whether your customers are satisfied or not, because this is what is going to make sense, and this is what we need to do with every job. So, that you are able to see that whether the person has been able to meet the performance standards or not, right, and that is how his performance is going to be measured, correct. So, we have been talking about two kind of measures, that is behavior based measures and result based measures. Now, if you look at this result based measure, it is linked with the behavior, right, because if you are not going to engage in certain behaviors, you cannot expect these results to be achieved, right. Now, what are the challenges that you have in a result based measure? Now, you need to identify what are the results which are relevant in a particular job, because the same results cannot be relevant for all jobs. For example, in a professor's job, in a salesman job, in a production manager's job or a system analyst job, right. You need to separately identify the kind of result that you are expected, right. So, you need to identify which results are relevant, right. Second, you also need to identify what is that an employee is able to do it, not something that is beyond his control, right. A salesman performance might be affected by unfavorable economic conditions, and these economic conditions are not under the employee's control. So, he will not be able to perform well. Okay. And you also ensure that sometimes people are only focusing on results, not on the behavior. Okay. So, results at all cost mentality is not good. So, there are other factors which make you efficient. What is the quality of the products that you have? Are you considering quality or not? Or if you are not considering quality and you are to produce simply results, then it will not be good. For example, you are going to have customers, but what kind of customers you have? They are coming today, but tomorrow they are not coming. So, what will happen in the process? Though you will be able to achieve results in a short term, but you are not able to retain your customers. Say for example, a faculty, you expect them to write papers, but are you expecting them to write papers because you want them to produce papers? So, he is going to produce say 5 papers in a year, but do you look at the quality of the papers, what kind of journals he is publishing? So, this idea, the mentality of producing results at all costs is not good. You must also consider the quality. And when it comes to producing results, sometimes what happens? It interferes with the teamwork, because you are only concerned with your own results, you are not concerned or bothered about others, right. So, you think that if you are able to achieve your results, good enough, whether others are able to get results or not, that is not your concern. For example, in a sales team, suppose you have distributed the zones to different sales people. Okay. So, every person is trying to achieve sales target in his sales zone, not trying to help others. So, it is interfering with the teamwork, because you are only concerned with your sales figures, right. And in these cases, it is very difficult to get feedback that what actually led to good result, right, and whether the result can really be termed as good or quality or not, right. Moving further, so now we say the difference between the behavior approach and the result approach. If you are talking about the behavior approach to measure performance, what happens? You try to create a link between the behavior and result, but sometimes it is not possible, because the measures of behaviors are subjective and result is objective. Okay. And if the outcome is not immediate, then how do you establish the link between the behavior and the results? And sometimes these results are the outcome which are not under the control of the employees, right. Other issues, if you are adopting a say result approach to measure performance, what happens? If you are not skilled enough, then behavior may not be linked with the results. Though we try to see that yes, behavior are linked with the results, but which behavior? That is to be identified, and whether there is a consistent improvement over behavior or performance of the employees or not. And the point that we had discussed last, that yes, there is no single way to do a job, right. There is no best way to do a job, there are alternative ways to do the job. So, are you not going to consider that alternative ways to the job if the job is done in a right way? So, what I am trying to say is that with both, whether you are going to adopt a behavior approach or result approach, make sure that it is linked with each other, the outcome is immediately visible, and you also consider those factors which are not under the control of employees, and make sure that there is a consistent improvement over performance or the result. Now, coming to the third factor, that is the trait approach. When I am talking about the trait approach, basically we are ignoring both the behavior and the result. Here our concern is about the individual, right, his traits and his characteristics, and also the traits and characteristics of the supervisors. Okay. So, the knowledge, skill and the personality of the individual is very, very important, because this is also going to influence the behavior and ultimately producing the results. Okay. So, whether you are able to develop good relationship, whether you have a positive attitude in your life, right, whether you get along well with the people, whether you have a very good communicator, whether a good negotiator and communicator, right. So, all these work related behaviors would also contribute to your performance. Okay. So, if it has not happened, it means that you need to bring about some changes in the design, structure and culture of the organization, so that it facilitates effective performance. So, the idea here is that when we are talking about trait approach, to ensure that these traits contribute, the only problem with the trait approach is that it is not measured in the organization, right, because it is not directly related to the performance. These traits are not under the control of the individuals, because it could be related to supervisors, could be related to the environment, or all kind of things. And even these traits are not stable, relatively stable you can say, because you know that your personality also changes over a period of time, but for a long span it could be stable, because you are, if you are going to show a consistent personality characteristics over a long period of time, then it becomes a trait. Okay. So, if you have developed certain habits, right, certain preferences, certain attitudes, it is very difficult to change, right, and that is why it is not measured, it is not related with the performance, right. So, if you have certain traits, say you are very intelligent, it does not mean that it is going to result in good results. Why? Because it is not being used, or you are not using them. There could be other factors which are contributing or supporting. So, these are some of the problems especially related to what you call this trait approach, and that is why trait approach is not considered, because it is related to individual, which may vary, which may change. Okay. And so, we are considering only the behavior and result, because we are able to establish a direct relationship between the behavior and result. Okay. Thank you very much.